Winter in the Bering Sea is harsh and challenging, but it is also the time when powerful fishing boats set out to hunt for giant king crabs, one of the world's most valuable seafood. The boats glide through waves as high as walls of water, cold winds and temperatures that often drop below zero, making every operation on deck difficult and dangerous. On board, the crew has prepared hundreds of giant steel traps, each weighing hundreds of kilograms, stacked on top of each other in large blocks. When reaching an area of sea known to be rich in crabs, the captain relies on experience, maps and navigation equipment to choose the location to release the traps. The cages are tied with bait, usually herring or mackerel, and then lowered by crane to the seabed at a depth of hundreds of meters. Each trap release requires a rhythmic coordination between the sailors, from the cable hooker, the winch operator to the GPS location recorder. After many hours, even days, the ship returns to pull the heavy cages onto the deck. When the cages just rise above the water, the sight of dozens, even hundreds of bright red king crabs with long legs and sharp spines appears as the moment everyone looks forward to the most. Immediately, the sailors have to quickly sort them, keep those that have reached commercial size and release the young or egg-bearing females back into the sea to maintain the resource. The work takes place continuously in the bitter cold, hands numb from the salt water and cold wind. But the pressure of time does not allow anyone to stop. A small mistake can cause injury or be swept away into the sea. Each hunting trip lasts for many days, sometimes weeks, and only when the ship's hold is full of crabs does the captain turn the ship back to port. Upon arrival, tons of fresh king crabs will be quickly transferred to cold storage or onto planes to be sent to luxury restaurants around the world. The journey is not only a hunt for a precious seafood but also a test of the endurance, skills and steely spirit of those who live by the sea, facing every day the harshest things that nature can create during the days spent out at sea in the Bering Sea. The weather can change in the blink of an eye. From a calm morning with gently rolling seas to a stormy afternoon with gusts of wind and waves higher than the top of the ship. When a storm rolls in, the ship rocks violently, the decks are soaked and slippery as ice, making hauling in the traps doubly dangerous. The crew must wear safety belts and hold onto ropes and railings, for a single strong wave can send them hurtling into the freezing water with little chance of survival. Meanwhile, the traps must be hauled up regularly, because king crabs wait for no one, and the seasonal catch is strictly limited to protect the population. When a full haul is hauled in, cheers rise above the howling wind. But then the sorting resumes quickly, one hand lifting crabs, the other taking notes, eyes always on the size and condition of each one. There are times when, after dozens of consecutive cages, the number of crabs that meet the standards is very low. Forcing the captain to consider changing the location of the traps. Relying on years of experience and careful observation of the currents, depth and temperature of the water, this hunt is not only based on muscle strength but also a battle of wits with the sea, with every small factor that can decide the success or failure of the trip. At night, the high-powered lights on the deck shine down on the Black Sea, where the cages continue to be released and pulled, while the seamen only take a few hours of sleep between shifts. They quickly eat hot meals, drink strong coffee to fight sleepiness, then step out onto the deck, where the cold and the roar of the waves become familiar companions. On the Bering Sea, each king crab brought to the deck is not only the result of labor but also a testament to the resilience and indomitable spirit of humans in the face of harsh nature. There are days when the Bering Sea seems to want to test the ultimate limit of humans. Thick fog covers the entire ship, reducing visibility to only a few meters. Forcing the captain to slow down and move carefully. But the crab hunting work cannot stop. In the cold, damp fog, the sailors are like faint shadows, constantly pulling, opening, and releasing the cages. The sound of metal clashing, the sound of chains screeching through the winches, and the sound of rushing water blend into the heavy rhythm of an endless workday. Each king crab brought to the deck is carefully inspected. Sometimes there are giant individuals, with a leg span of nearly 2 meters. Weighing more than 10 kilograms, making the whole crew admire. But they still have to stay alert and principled. Any crab that does not meet the standards is immediately released back into the sea, so that the next season can return with a higher size and value. Inside the hold, the system of circulating seawater tanks is constantly operating, keeping the crabs alive in near-natural conditions until they return to port. The work here is no less hard, as each crab must be carefully arranged to avoid breaking its claws or killing it before it reaches its destination. Outside, the grey sky often signals an approaching storm. But the experience of long-time sailors allows them to predict a safe period of time to continue working before having to pull in the nets and seek shelter. The king crab fishing season usually lasts only a few weeks, but each trip requires a year of experience, courage, and patience. When the ship finally turned toward land, everyone was exhausted, but their eyes lit up as they looked at the full hold of crabs, the result of days and nights battling the wind and the cold. On the dock, when the crates of king crab were unloaded, loaded onto refrigerated trucks or taken straight to the airport, the arduous journey was truly over, only to be followed a few months later by a new hunting season, which would take them back to the fierce seas of the Bering region on the return journey from the Bering Sea. Despite being far from the rough seas, the ship still faced many potential dangers. Icy seawater splashed onto the deck, forming a thick layer of slippery ice that forced the crew to constantly use hammers and shovels to break it up to keep the ship from losing its balance. The sound of metal hitting ice echoed in the quiet night, mixed with the rumbling of the engine like the heartbeat of the ship taking them home. Inside the hold, the crab tanks were closely monitored, the saltwater pumps and temperature control systems working continuously to keep the crabs alive and healthy until they reached port. Each crew member, exhausted as they were, took turns keeping watch, as even a small malfunction could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in cargo. When land appeared on the horizon, a sense of relief mixed with pride spread across everyone's faces. They know that ahead lie days and nights of storms, fog, cold and extreme fatigue, all to bring home the freshest king crabs in the world. At the port, the unloading scene takes place urgently. Each crab cage is taken down, inspected, then packed into boxes and shipped to cold storage or onto planes to distant markets such as Japan. The US or Europe. In luxury restaurants, when king crab is served on the diners' tables, few know that behind the sweet taste and white meat is a harsh journey of people who dare to face the fierce nature. And then, when the short holidays pass, the call of the sea resounds again. The crew will once again don their cold weather gear, step onto the deck, leave the dock and head straight for the frigid waters, where the hunt for king crab has never stopped for generations. And like an endless loop, each king crab hunting season in the Bering Sea opens with the same familiar but never less tense rituals. The ship is refueled with fuel, food, tools and hundreds of new traps are carefully inspected to ensure they are not damaged. The captain reviews the weather forecast, tides, currents and notes the coordinates that have brought high yields in previous seasons. The sailors prepare themselves mentally to face endless sleepless nights, their hands chapped by salt water and cold, and their bodies always in a state of tension like strings before the uncertainty of the sea. As the ship leaves the port, behind are the pale yellow lights of the mainland gradually disappearing. Ahead is a vast night filled with cold air and the sound of waves. Each engine stroke pushes the ship deeper into the harsh sea, where the cold is biting. The waves can swallow anyone who is careless, but also where the treasures are hidden deep below, schools of deep red king crabs. Large, plump, waiting to be brought up to the deck. Once at the fishing spot, the work is non-stop, dropping the cages, marking the coordinates, waiting, then pulling them up and sorting. Each empty trap is a heart-wrenching moment, but each full trap makes all the fatigue disappear, leaving only excitement and determination to continue. The seafarers understand that luck does not come by itself, but must be exchanged for sweat, strength, experience and courage. Every season, there will be trips with good harvests and trips with almost nothing. But no one gives up. Because the Bering Sea, though cruel, is still the place that feeds the whole community, is the source of livelihood and also the place where their courage is engraved through each fierce wave and each king crab brought up from the cold depths. Each crew member on the king crab boats in the Bering Sea has their own story. But they all have one thing in common, a love and attachment to the sea. Despite knowing full well that the sea can take lives at any moment. On deck, they work like a well-programmed machine. One hooks the cable to the cage. One operates the winch. One is ready to sort the crabs as soon as the cage touches the deck. There is no room for delay, because even a few seconds of inattention can cause the steel cable to stretch, knocking someone nearby or throwing someone into the sea. All senses are always strained to hear the sound of the engine. Watch the direction of the waves, and feel every small change in the weather. Out there, the sea stretches endlessly, cold and dark, but below is a completely different world, where giant king crabs slowly crawl across the cold sand. Completely unaware that on the surface of the water, there is a team of humans hunting them with a fierceness no less than any war. When the seas are calm, they take the opportunity to sit together, drink hot coffee, and recount stormy trips or times when the traps were so full that they had to mobilize the entire crew to carry them. But that joy doesn't last long, because the tight schedule quickly brings them back to the familiar rhythm, the sound of winches screeching, the heavy metal banging on the deck, the sound of seawater splashing in the cold wind. Just like that, day and night merge into one, with only work and the sole goal of filling the hold with precious king crabs. And when the season ends, they leave the sea to return, carrying with them fatigue, pride, and anticipation for the next hunt. Because no matter how harsh the Bering Sea is, they know they will return. When they return to land after weeks at sea, the crew often has only a few days to rest, hug their families, and enjoy the rare warmth before the new sea season calls. But even when they are on shore, their minds are still at sea, remembering the wind whistling through the masts, the salty smell of steam rising from the deck, and the thrill of each time the traps rise to the surface. Many admit that the Bering Sea is an irresistible challenge, harsh, dangerous, but also alluring, because the reward is not only the value of the king crabs, but also the feeling of victory when conquering one of the most fierce seas on the planet. Each new hunting season, they meet familiar faces on the docks, friends, teammates, even rivals, all with the same goal. The roar of engines as a series of ships leave the dock creates a vivid picture of the sea season, where courage and skill are tested by fire. And far out at sea, amid high waves and biting cold, the steel cages continue to sink to the bottom, beginning an endless cycle of relentless hunting. Each king crab brought aboard is not only the ship's own spoils, but also a testament to human endurance against nature, a story that spans generations. From the first sailors who dared to set foot in the Bering Sea to those who continue to follow in their footsteps today, carrying in their hearts the fire of the sea. Tales of king crab seasons in the Bering Sea are often passed down as legend, not only to boast of bountiful catches, but also to remember the crew who never returned. The seas here are unforgiving, and a sudden swell or a minor equipment failure can turn an ordinary day into a tragedy. On the boats, there is an unwritten rule: everyone must look out for each other, because each individual's life depends on the alertness and skill of the crew. Between shifts lasting dozens of hours, they share sips of hot coffee, quick meals in the cold wind, and moments of silence looking out at the dark sea, where the only sounds are the waves and the yellow light from the bow reflecting off the deep black water. They understand that, despite the support of modern technology, success still depends as much on experience. Feeling and grit. Experienced captains can read the sea like an open book, from the color of the water, to the direction of the waves, to the smell of the wind, to find out where the king crab schools are. And when a season ends, no one knows whether the next will bring luck or more severe challenges. But all are certain of one thing: they will return, because this hunt is ingrained in the blood, an indispensable part of the life and identity of those attached to the Bering Sea. As night falls on the Bering Sea, powerful lights from the decks shine through the thick fog, creating faint streaks of light that seem to penetrate another world. Under that light, the traps are lowered again, sinking into the cold darkness of the seabed. The sound of steel cables whistling through pulleys, mixed with the whistling wind in the ears, the roar of waves crashing against the ship's sides, all creating a fierce soundtrack of the sea. On deck, the sailors were wrapped tightly in cold weather jackets, their breath billowing in white clouds. Their hands calloused but still moving quickly to keep up with the work. No one spoke much. All communication was mainly through eye contact and short shouts, because between the sound of the engines, the waves, and the clanging of metal, words were hard to hear clearly. Inside the hold, giant king crabs crawled slowly in tanks of cold seawater, completely unaware that they had just escaped the deep and were about to become expensive delicacies on banquet tables halfway around the world. Despite dozens of sea seasons, everyone on board still felt the same thrill when the first cage of the trip rose to the surface. It was the decisive moment, signaling whether this year's hunting season would be favorable or they would face days of exhausting searching. But no matter the outcome, they would continue, because in the world of Bering Sea crab hunters, giving up was never an option night after day. The Bering Sea is an endless ordeal, where time seems to be measured not in hours or minutes but in the number of times the traps are released and pulled. Each shift can last more than 20 hours, with only short breaks for food and a few dozen minutes of sleep. Then it's back to work. Their bodies get used to the harsh rhythm, But the cold never lessens, it seeps through every layer of clothing, chilling them to the bone. Occasionally, during storms, they are forced to stop, anchor the ship in a safe direction, and wait for the weather to calm down. But this break is not exactly comfortable, as the ship still rocks violently, the sound of waves crashing against the hull echoing like a pounding drum. A reminder that the sea here never sleeps. Whenever the sky clears again, the work resumes immediately, the pace even more urgent to make up for lost time. And so the hold slowly filled with long-legged, hard-shelled, bright red king crabs, the result of hundreds of endless traps, cages, and sorting operations. The season passed quickly, and when the last day arrived, everyone was both relieved and sad. They knew they had survived another season at sea. But they also felt a strange emptiness as the ship turned toward land, leaving behind the cold, mysterious sea where, in just a few months, they would return to continue their eternal hunt. As the ship neared land, the smell of salt gave way to the damp wood of the dock and the hum of the dockyard. The crew, exhausted from weeks of non-stop work, busied themselves with the final touches, checking crab counts, recording trip data, cleaning the decks, and making sure all the equipment was ready for the next trip. Each crate of king crab is carefully lifted from the tank onto a refrigerated truck, and transported directly to a warehouse or airport for delivery to high-end restaurants. There, the sweet, white meat appears on luxurious banquet tables. But few can imagine the arduous and dangerous journey it has undergone before reaching the diners. For the crew, each trip is not only a struggle for survival, but also a battle with nature and their own limits. The Bering Sea has taken many things from them: time with family,